Oh, we're live. Oh, hey. Hey, I'm totally paying attention. That's my fault. I apologize. We're a little late on the draw today. It's okay. Only by a few seconds at least, so not too terrible. Hey guys, welcome to the show. This is Generation Orange. I am one of your two hosts, Sean Ringrose, and my co-host is
Mark. How you doing, guys? What's going on?
Hold it down, baby. Guys, it's been a week, both Dynamo related and otherwise. Work is a thing. I literally got off work today at about 6:30. And so I've had about an hour of prep. 30 minutes of that was eating food. So it has not been much of a prep night tonight for me. What about you, Mark? How's work going?
Well, I mean, same as usual. Beginning of the year means new things to go out and sell, new items. So you'll see a lot of brand new beers out there, seltzers, whatever, quenches your thirst. So it's been a little bit of busy time for me as well. It's always a busy time for me regardless. But yeah, it's a little bit busy out here, man. But we're here, ready to go. Been a busy week for the Dynamo, and I know a lot of fans out there are excited about all the news that's been happening, all the acquisitions, and so let's get started.
So let's start off with this. Obviously, the biggest news of the week, of course, is Tyler Pasher of Indy 11 signing with the Dynamo. No, I'm just kidding. That's not the biggest news of the week. We are going to talk about that, though. And since Harry's in chat with us, I figured actually this would probably be a pretty good chance to ask a pretty good time to ask Harry about Tyler Pasher of Indy 11, because Harry's a pretty big USL guy. So Harry, what are your thoughts on Tyler Pasher? It's going to take him a minute because he's got to hear us, which may take about 30 seconds or so. But I really am genuinely curious what Harry has to say. So while we're waiting for Harry to talk to us, Mark.
Before we do that, then let's go to the poll question of the day.
There you go. Poll question. Started off top. I like it.
Yeah. So obviously, guys, every day of the show, typically on Wednesdays, we try to have a poll question today for you guys, to get, involved and interactive with us, obviously on Twitter. And today's poll question was, obviously, with all the acquisitions by the Dynamo the last few weeks, which of the current crop of new players excites you most? And my choices were Joe Corona, Fafa, Tim Parker, or Maxi Orite. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough polls to put Tyler on there. So, I mean, sorry guys, but you could have wrote them down in the comments if you wanted to. And the winner with 65% of the vote is Tim Parker. No surprise there. I'm sure that the Dynamo fans out there, supporters, and all the groups out there are really excited to finally grab an established MLS defender. Somebody who hopefully is going to be the anchor finally for our defense that's been leaking ever since 2014. I'm excited about the move. Me myself personally. I did mention though, aside from grabbing Parker, I hope that's not the only major acquisition on defense that we decide to make, because Batman does need his Robin. I don't want it to be another thing, like what we did with Kiki, what we did with Raul Rodriguez and Adolfo Machado, where we grab our supposed anchor, but we didn't pair him up with anybody of quality right next to him. So, we'll see what happens, man. Sean, what was your decision on that poll?
What was the questioning? Because I don't have it pulled up in front of me.
Which player excites you the most of the new players that came in?
Oh, see that's actually tough. Probably though. I mean, being real, I do have to agree with the other 65% of pollers, but Tim Parker, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head talking CB. Look, it's a clear position of need. There's no doubt about it. Tab said they were addressing it, and they addressed it, in a big way. And it was a big enough of a move that, and for a player that the other team's fans actually were upset to lose. This has not been familiar territory for us with the Dynamo. Most of the time when we picked up a player, and even if you think about Fafa Pico, the fans of that team that we pick them up from aren't usually that upset about it. They're like, it was a player that was on the periphery or whatever. Tim Parker, on the other hand, this was a starter for them. He was an absolute stalwart at center back. Now they've got a guy that's coming up that's a young rookie that's going to be able to step into his place. But anytime you go from a veteran to a rookie, it's a tough pill to swallow. And look, the Dynamo got Tim for 450,000 in GAM, general allocation money, and that alone is a great move. But a lot of people said, well, but yeah, it goes up to $1 million of allocation if with performance incentives and things like that, and that's great. But look, I mentioned this in another chat, but if we end up having to pay $1 million for Tim Parker, that means that Tim Parker was an absolute beast for the Dynamo, and I am 100% on board with that.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, the 450, it's a pretty high investment in Dynamo terms, for them to give up on a defender. But like I said, if he solves the problem of the leaky defense, then I'm all for it. Like I said, even if it goes up to the suspect 1 million, I mean, I would love to know what the incentives are to get to that point. But like I said, if it does get to that point, then that means that our defense is legit and he's doing his job as our anchor. So, you gotta pay the price for quality players, man, and that's the thing. And if they're doing really well, they deserve to be paid.
Yeah. So real quick, and actually, this is a good question from Dynamo Insider. So I'm gonna read it and then I'm gonna answer it, and then I'll let you answer it, Mark. So what was your guys' reaction when Lester deleted his first tweet regarding Tim Parker? Anybody who was following Generation Orange at that time on Twitter, my reaction, because I said exactly what I thought at that very moment. One, this is likely the result of when Lester deleted the tweet, and right after Glenn had deleted his tweet about it. This is likely the result of the player not being informed yet, or some grouping of that, something similar to that. The player or his agent or something to the effect had not been informed yet, and his current team and the new team wanted time to inform the player. It's usually the case when those sorts of things happen. And look, this is Glenn and this is Lester. These two individuals are not individuals that go around posting rumors. They're posting confirmed stuff that they get from their sources. And so, it was one of those things that the moment that I saw them delete it, I knew pretty strongly that, hey, this is still happening. It may just take a little bit longer than we want, but it's still going to happen. So it was, oh, you guys right now. So it was good to see them just maybe an hour or so later be able to put up there that it was officially final, and that they could go ahead and post about it. And to be fair, it warranted the reactions that it got. Like I said, I mean, the New York fans being upset about losing the player, it speaks a lot about Tim Parker in general. So Mark, in regard to that question, you and I were talking about this in our little host chat, but what was your reaction when Lester deleted that tweet?
Well, honestly, I mean, I didn't really get to see when he deleted it. I mean, I clicked on it and it said tweet felt to load or whatever and things of that nature. I didn't really think much of it. Like I said, it's one of those things where they probably just got a little bit ahead of themselves. Sorry, for some reason my volume. Yeah, man. For some reason, I feel like they probably just got a little bit ahead of themselves or whatever, and they're reporters. They want to go out there and report what they're following, right? The thing about Glenn and Lester, like you said, I don't think they're necessarily trying to be first. They're just trying to be accurate and correct. They don't care too much for the rumors and for all the trying to be first and I said this 2 weeks ago type of deal, whatever. They're just there to report whatever the main people from the Dynamo give them, and they're getting their facts directly from the source. So I wasn't too concerned about whether or not they just overstepped their boundaries and tweeted that stuff out early, and then there was a possibility of us losing that deal or whatever. Nah, I never thought nothing like that. So
yeah, Sergio mentions the name Will Forbes on Twitter, who's kind of known colloquially as MLS transfers. About as reliable as a blind squirrel trying to find a nut. You might get right, once every once in a while, but it's pretty rare and far between. Look, and it's no offense to him. I think that he probably does believe he has sources, but his sources, extend to the hey, my brother's cousin's first grandmother's left nut said that such and such team is interested in so and so. It's look, anybody can throw, and I'm the shade that Tom Bogert threw at Will Forbes was absolutely spectacular. But anybody can go out there and say my sources said this or my sources said that. I've heard this, whatever. And a lot of people do. And a lot of times what they hear is secondhand information, and it may or may not be accurate. There are people out there that they talk to players or they talk to coaches or, from academy on up. Hey, that's insider information, but that doesn't always make it accurate. When it comes to, guys like Glenn and Lester, it is absolutely their responsibility as members of the media, and Victor Ariza, now that he's covering as part of the Striker Texas, it is their responsibility as media and us to some extent as well to make sure that the information that we are sharing is accurate and at least verifiable. And so that's why you see Lester, when he tweets, it's known, and he tweets something, it's usually considered a Lester bomb because it's the equivalent of the Woj bomb from the NBA on ESPN, Adrian Wojnarowski, however you pronounce his last name. There you go. Yeah. It's the equivalent of that for Dynamo fans because when Lester tweets it, it is about as close to official as it's going to get, or at least it's confirmed as going to get, without having. And look, Lester has people inside. I guarantee you, inside that organization of the Houston Dynamo FC, that he's getting small bits of information and leaks from, and he's just trying to confirm something that he heard from somebody else. And Glenn's doing the same thing. I say that, Dynamo Insider, just to let you know that, at the very least, if you're not following those two guys on Twitter, follow those guys on Twitter. But, also partially to that, I just definitely make sure that, you be aware, of the fakers and the haters out there, because there are many of them out there for sure. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
And not to just pile on. I mean, obviously, I seen all the all the burns that everybody's giving this Will Forbes guy, whatever, at transfers, MLS or whatever. MLS transfers to somebody else actually, so we don't want to get that mixed up. No, man, it's crazy because, like I said, there's going to be people out there who think they have sources or whatever, and they might have a source that gives them something here every time, whatever this and that. But at the end of the day, they're rumors. You see rumors from everywhere, all over the place. You type in whatever, you type in Houston Dynamo on Twitter, and you're gonna find a lot of different things, whatever. So, it's just one of those things where, unfortunately for him, he got kind of caught thinking that he had the scoop, and unfortunately for him, he did. He did it.
Real quick, I want to throw this out there. So there's a bunch of you in chat. First of all, amazing. We appreciate the the watching, the tuning and listening. If you haven't yet, make sure you check us out on anchor.fm/GenOrange, and follow us on Twitter for sure at GenOrangeRadio. Also, Mark, and you can see Mark and our Twitter handles underneath our names, but that's Mark. That's at Che Segovia, CheSegovia, and then me at Sean Ringrose, at Sean like Sean Connery, Ringrose, Ringrose. Give us a follow on Twitter. Yep, they're down below, but hey, we're an audio only podcast now too, so they may not get to see that. So definitely appreciate the follows there. And guys, thanks for tuning in live. We cannot express how amazing it is to see as many of you in chat right now as are watching. That's great. But like I said, just make sure you follow so you know when we go live every week. We try to go live at 7 every week, but sometimes, like this week, that doesn't always happen. So just check out our Twitter. We try to at least give you a heads up when we can, that, hey, we're going to start a little late, or, hey, maybe this week work is kind of in the way and there's no chance of us doing it today or whatever. And so, yeah, just give us a follow on Twitter. You'll appreciate it, and we'll appreciate it.
Sure, man, and we're real active on there. So, even though we're busy in our work lives, we try to be as active as possible on there with you guys.
Dude, I'm glad work don't know that I have that Twitter account to tweet from, because holy crap, I'd be in trouble. No, I'm kidding. They'd be all about it. But with that said, we kind of slightly talked about Tim Parker. I kind of think we need to talk a little bit about Tim Parker. But before we go with that, I did ask Harry the question, and he did respond. So Harry said that Tyler Pasher had a great season for Indy 11. He's got the ability to score at any time. He said, of course, that is considering it's USL, but he is still a solid player. In my opinion, based on that information and based off what I've read before and seen before, Tyler Pasher is going to be kind of he's intended. He was signed and transferred in, if you will, for 50K. He was signed as a player that they intend to A, still continue developing through the system, but also B, he's intending to be a piece that's part of this whole big puzzle. He's not intended to probably come in as a starter. He's going to challenge for a starting position, but I don't think they intend him out of the gate to be a starter. Look, we have 11 forwards right now, and so 11 forwards on the roster. And if you move Fafa from a midfielder to a forward, that's 12 forwards on the roster. We got 12 forwards on the roster right now. You can't play 12 forwards, even in a 4-3-3. You can't play 12 forwards. So, there's going to be some moving of pieces, and there's going to be a lot of midweek matches this year, a lot of short weeks, two match weeks. So I would expect that Tyler's going to get some playing time, and there have been players that are named players in MLS or were named players at one point in MLS. That if Quincy Amarikwa, Dom Dwyer, the list goes on. I'm not going to name them all, but those are two just off the top of my head that I can think of. That were forwards that came from USL basically and worked their way up through the ranks. And so, USL is a place that you might be able to find somebody if you can find someone that fits your system. And here's to hoping Tyler Pasher is one of those guys. But again, not planning on him being the goal scorer extraordinaire, up top for us. Holy shit, Harry! Thanks for the subscription. We appreciate you, man. That's awesome. We got a sub, baby.
Awesome. Yeah, but also somebody else, Christian Ramirez, I think came from USL as well. So I mean, there is talent to be found down there, and maybe, like I said, it's one of those things where maybe he can do better at another level, at a higher level, and hopefully that's the case with us, and he comes out here, and whether he's a starter, which I'm along with Sean, I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, but I mean, if he's our quote unquote super sub or whatever, that'd be a nice thing too, or somebody who can come in and give us some energy the last 10-15 minutes of the match, when we need a goal or when we need some creativity on the field, on the pitch for those last couple of minutes or whatever. Like I said, it's sometimes, obviously we want the ball in the back of the net, especially if you're a forward, but a lot of times too, we need creativity and people who possess the prowess to go up there and attack in that final 18 and inside the box as well. And I think Tyler is one of those players that can provide that.
And Kenny makes a good point too. He goes, I just hope we can find about 3 to 4 goals out of Pasher this year, league plus cup, referring to MLS plus the Open Cup. Is that a fair number? I think that's completely fair. 3 to 4, George says anywhere from 6 to 10. Look, if he's given the opportunity at the very least in US Open Cup, that's a player that has the capability against USL teams specifically, has shown that he can be prolific. And you put him in a situation where he's getting service into the box, he's getting fed in positions where he can run under the ball. You just never know. You just absolutely never know. We're going to need to see if he's got the strength to handle MLS defenders. It's a slightly different situation going from USL to MLS, but who knows? Again, he might absolutely be able to handle it. Kenny does note, for reference, the 2 highest goal totals for the team last year were 7 and 5. So a guy who's coming in and gets 3 to 4 goals coming out of the USL, that's comfortable territory for me as a signing, especially one that's not costing you hardly anything. At a forward/winger. Again, he doesn't play just forward. He also plays winger, so he can slot in a few different positions. And, injuries do happen throughout the season. Sometimes you got to rest guys. Sometimes guys pick up yellow card accumulations, red cards, whatever may happen. Having a guy that can come in and fill that position, similar to what Hansen did last year when Elise had to go out, having that guy that can come in and play those, very important minutes. We saw what happened with Hansen. The guy was an absolute beast for the few times that he was out there initially early in the season when Elise was still on the team. And so he's going to get an opportunity at some point, and as long as he can show he deserves that opportunity, just like with Hansen, he's going to continue to get more opportunities to show it.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously if we can get somewhere back to normality this season with, having the Open Cup play, and then depending on what else happens, if rumors are that they want to do that MLS's back tournament again, run that thing back again. I don't know if that would count towards the regular season like it did last season. But if they do, and it's something separate from afar from the regular season, that's another tournament that you can feature in or something like that, you know. And obviously, the Open Cup is somewhere where we technically kind of play our B and C team players, you know, or our up and coming and academy players, and that should be one of the tournaments where he should really be highlighted in, you know, if we're really taking him seriously as far as a player that's going to contribute to the team.
Absolutely. Sorry, answering or actually sending a text message while I was thinking about it. So enough about Tyler Pasher. I said we would talk a little more Tim Parker. Obviously, that is the big news. That's the big deal. That's the big move. That's the thing we've all really truly been waiting for. This center back that is going to be the player that's supposed to come in. He's supposed to truly help anchor that back line. He's the player that's going to be vocal. He's going to be a leader. He's got known quality. He's a known quantity in terms of his capability, in terms of his athleticism, in terms of his strength. Look, the guy was impressive with Red Bulls, and as long as you get the same guy that played for Red Bulls playing for the Dynamo, you know, I am completely satisfied with this move. Again, only 450 up front, 450K up front, potentially an additional 600, or really just 550. But look, at that point, like I said, I mean, he's earned every bit of that, you know, every bit of that 1 million. You know, if he comes out and they reach that one, you know, they reach that point where it gets to 1 million in total, then he's earned it, and we're living the high life because the dude has earned it, and I'm okay with that. And I think that's the type of business that the Dynamo have to get in more often, where they are creating opportunities for players and they're bringing them in on maybe less cost than they would have to otherwise, by giving some bonuses and incentives if the player does well while they're with the team. Because look, if the team still sucks, we've only played 450,000 out of the gate for the guy, and it's really no harm, no foul, no, you know, no skin off my back, if you will. But if the guy comes in and tears it up and you pay a little bit more, then guess what? He's earning that anyways. The team that gave him to you, you got him for cheaper out of the, you know, up front. You can't complain with that. You just really can't.
I mean, you're getting a player who has over 150 matches in MLS played, so he's a veteran. He knows how to play, you know, in this league, which is a big plus, obviously. And you know, he's been really good. He's been a starter for New York Red Bulls the last 2-3 years, and prior to that with Vancouver. And he's a really good physical player that you need. You know, somebody strong who's vocal. I guess I'm guessing that he's the leader they're looking for, that they've been mentioning, that they need somebody vocal who can kind of, I guess, you know, yell at people from time to time, you know, when they're kind of dropping quality on the pitch. But we'll see if that happens or not. But yeah, man, I mean, obviously a lot of excitement on social media about the acquisition of Tim Parker. I really do hope, like I said, that he, you know, can shore up this defense, man. Obviously it's not just on him. It's on the other players that are currently with us right now. And then obviously I'm hoping that that's not the last of the defensive players that we're going to sign, aside from the draft, if that does happen as well. But yeah, man, I'm excited for Tim Parker. I think it's a great acquisition. Like I said, you know, 450,000, it is what it is. And if it goes to 1 million, that means he's doing a great job, and that's what we want. We want players that do great jobs. Players who do great jobs cost money, man, and that's what we have to get in the habit of knowing, that if we want to have a quality team or a team above average, it costs a little bit of money to do so. So.
Absolutely. Another move that was made that I actually forgot when I was typing this up, it happened since our last show. Maximiliano Urruti is now a Houston Dynamo player. I don't know about you, but this was not a move I foresaw coming at all. But that, you know, look, it's a veteran striker, a true striker. He has plenty of strength. Yeah, he's a little bit older. He's not going to, in my opinion, not necessarily going to be your starter. But as I said in chat, you know, he's kind of that guy that I personally view as the guy that's finally going to kind of take that role of that we gave Vicente Sanchez when he was here. That kind of late player that comes on in the last 15, 20, 25 minutes of matches, but a guy that can absolutely help you take a match over or help kill a match off, both by being a veteran, but also a guy that usually has a nose for goal. He also was a pain in our ass when he was with Frisco. So, hey, at least Frisco doesn't have him back.
Yeah, I mean, again, another player with a lot of MLS experience, a veteran. He with over 200 games in MLS, over 50 goals scored in MLS play. So I mean, he's not like uh, a 20 plus goal scorer per season, but 8 to 10, 8 to 12 is a fairly reasonable target for him, for a player of his caliber, which would be great for us, especially if he's our first off the bench as far as forwards and things of that nature, if everything goes to plan. Yeah, man, like I said, I mean, it's a great acquisition. I think he's going to give us a different look up front, from a little bit different from what Christian gives. I think he's a little bit more of a mobile number nine, as far as like Christian being more of a holding number nine. But it's always good to have different looks up there, and have different creativity and different mindsets from different strikers up there. The only thing I want is the ball in the back of the net. That's all I care about.
Well, not in the back of ours.
No, no,
I
no, no.
mean, you,
You know,
you
you
know,
know,
we got to be specific up in here because I mean, technically, it's been in the back of the net a lot of times for the Dynamo, just not the right net.
yeah.
So with that being said, yeah, like oh, go ahead.
But one more thing, sorry. But one more thing, obviously we traded Kiki to Montreal to grab him. I just hope it's not a repeat from last year's trade with Montreal, where they got the best out of us and they fleeced us. So hopefully we can return the favor this season. And hopefully the attacking player we get from them does really well for us, as Romel did really well for them last season.
Absolutely. I mean, they owe us, right? That's how that works. I genuinely believe, and I'm willing to say this, and put a little oomph behind it, if you will. I genuinely believe that Arudi is going to have anywhere from 7 to 10 goals this season, is my guess. And the reason I say that is because he's going to have plenty of opportunities, even in late, the late minutes of matches. Look, he scores 1 goal every couple of matches, every 3 matches. He's going to hit that number pretty easily. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Now, that's I actually wanted to get to that, so I'm glad you asked, Christian. But who's your starting nine? Ramirez? I think this is an interesting question right now because there's so many possibilities of who can start in that starting nine position. The thing is we don't have to play with a true striker either. We could play with a shadow striker, and then a 10 that plays a little higher up, like a Quintero, for instance. We do have plenty of wingers that he doesn't have to necessarily play on the wing. So there's just so many options and so many possibilities, and I think that plays into Tab's hands, being able to find what works and what doesn't work, and being able to let what works kind of continue to work instead of having to kind of play the same formation, play the same players week in, week out. I think being able to have and know, where players are most comfortable playing and getting the most out of them, that's the responsibility of the coach. And I'm at the point now with the moves that we've made already, and I have a feeling there are still some sort of moves left to go, whether it's just a draft, a player that gets drafted, or a trade tied to the draft, or whatever it is. I still think there's a move or two still left to be had. So I kind of want to see what's going to go on with that. But as of right now, this offseason has been one of our best off seasons in a while. Now, I say that. The caveat to that is, on paper, it looks like a pretty solid offseason. However, as we know, a solid offseason on paper does not always equate to a solid season in MLS. So it's kind of curious. It's going to be very interesting to see. Can Tab pull the strings? Can he figure out how to make these players work in the right ways? I guess we'll find out, right? I mean, that's all that's left to really say about that. And I want to predict Ramirez as our starting nine, but I don't even know if we're going to play with a true nine at this point.
No, obviously, it's one of those things. Like I said, like right now, January 21st. Yeah, he's your starting nine. But obviously, we still have a lot of time to go before the start of MLS season. So anything can happen. And obviously, like right now, if I had to put a team out today, I mean, it would be Quintero, Ramirez at the nine, and then Lassiter on the right side. But obviously, Bahamich can come in and can take the world by storm, and he could be your starting right winger, and then Lassiter can be moved up to the nine because he can play that role as well, depending on what type of forward he wants up there. Or it could be Christian. Christian could be finally, hey, this is my opportunity to shine, to really solidify myself as the number 9 for the Houston Dynamo, and he might take that bull by the horns and run with it, and that'd be great for us as well. So I'm not sure, like I said, but if you're asking me for today, January 21st, yeah, Ramirez is just starting 9. So.
And look, we did see some good play out of Ramirez last year. Maybe not the best, but he had a few opportunities. He was given a few chances to show that he deserved to start over Morrow. And look, Morrow was struggling. There was no doubt about it last year. I mean, the guy had 3 goals by the end of the season, and he played the majority of matches, and he just couldn't find the net. He finally did in the last match of the season when it didn't matter whatsoever. But I guess the match before the last match, but it still didn't matter. I see here that someone says Minor Figueroa has signed. That's actually good to know. That's a backup CV that we're definitely going to need. Nice. You sure your source isn't Will Forbes? No, I'm just kidding. Christian looks up every time we say Christian. That's pretty funny. But I there's so much to like right now about the way that this team has been built over the last couple of seasons in particular. You've gotten rid of Morrow and Elise, which I feel like they were almost in a way they were top level MLS talents in general. But at the same time, they were talents that were viewed as, not viewed as, but they were talents that, in my opinion, held back the growth of this team. Because they were players that were paid so much that you couldn't afford not to start them. We talked about that last year at one point where, Morrow's a player or Kiki's a player. Perfect example with Kiki too. These are 2 players that you're paying about over $1 million, in salary to. And if I'm the owner, I'm sitting here going, no, you got to play this play this player so I'm getting the most out of them. So I just say that because I do think it's important, to keep in mind as fans. That we're seeing upgrades in a lot of positions, and we're not done. Like I said, I still expect a move or 2 left. That may not be an upgrade per se, but depth moves possibly. But we're in a position right now where we're not scrambling to sign a big player right now. We just aren't. And trust me, if they sign a big player, besides Tim Parker, I'm down for it. I'm not going to complain. That would be great. But we're also not in a position where I feel like as a squad right now with how we're built, that we would be hard pressed to say we couldn't at least make playoffs this year. And consider, hold on just for 1 second, to consider how much flack we have given this front office. I think it is more clear now that there are 1 or 2 things going on. 1, Tab is pulling all the strings, and Matt Jordan is simply there to advise on things like salaries, contracts, etc. He's not that, Matt's just signing the deals and that's it. Or the second thing is that Matt Jordan has tried to find players that the coach at the time wanted to bring in, and he brought those players in. And we've heard rumors that was the case with Elise, with Morrow, with other players like Vicente Sanchez and et cetera. So if that's the case, if that's how Matt Jordan's gone about this, then how can you say that the coach was a major success? And I'm bringing this up because it's important. How could you say that coach was a major success if he was the one pulling the strings? We give Matt Jordan all the flack in the world for being a terrible general manager. But if he's doing what the coaches are asking him to do, he's fulfilling his job. And yes, I know I'm defending Matt Jordan right now. I still don't want him to be our GM. But I have concerns that if we brought in another GM, is that going to change anything right now? And I don't think it is. Until we get new ownership, it's not going to change anything. And so let's ride what we got. Look, they're making it work. Tab is absolutely figuring out ways to make it work. So, hey, George, unsubscribe. Ouch, George. Ouch. That hurts, bro. That hurts. To unsubscribe, you'd have to subscribe first. I just say that because I thought that needed to be brought up because I think that gets overshadowed a little bit. And I do think Matt gets a bad, gets cast in the wrong light sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes it's definitely warranted. But I do think he gets, cast in a bad light sometimes because he's been saddled with these coaches that were making, requests and wanting certain players and certain types of players that, that he made happen, within his ability. And so again, I just think maybe we need to be a little more fair. I'm not saying, hey, the guy should stick around for 4 more years, but I am saying maybe maybe we see what there is in this. Because if Tab is able to point out the players he wants and Matt is able to make it happen, then that seems like, to me, we make it work. We see what's going to go on. I mean, hey, let's go, right?
Right. Obviously I don't believe the offseason is finished. I don't think we're done with the player acquisitions. Obviously, I know a lot of people on social media, Twitter, are obviously harping on the fact that we still have 2 DP spots open. And whether or not those DP spots get filled, I mean, it's obviously up to the front office and Tab to see what kind of players they're scouting and what kind of players they're trying to recruit. I don't know if they are looking to fill those spots. I mean, but regardless of if we do fill them or not, I feel that obviously them having a busy offseason like they are currently having, it's good. I mean, because the club needed turnover, the team needed a bit of a turnover, and it's good to see that they're working together, to make these things happen. And I think Tab is real clear on what he wants and what kind of players he's looking for, and and things of that nature. And Matt is obviously there to kind of let them know, hey, how the mechanisms work and what's available to you, and where we can work within our budget, I guess, per se. And that's what it's all about. The head coach and the general manager in this sense working hand in hand for a common goal of having a good team to put on the pitch, and hopefully a playoff team and maybe a contender in the future. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, I mean, obviously, I'm not pro Matt Jordan. I know you're not pro Matt Jordan, and I do agree that, sometimes, he's been put in a dark light, but it's been duly noted that, he does deserve some of the blame as well, if not, most of it. But I mean, but at the same time, results are what carry everybody. So if this season is the start of the season where they make the playoffs and they go on to having 5-6 straight seasons of playoffs and maybe a championship here and there, then are we gonna? I mean, I'm pretty sure we're gonna forget about everything that happened the last 6 seasons. So it's a result based service here. I mean, if you give us good results, we'll be on your side. But if you're gonna give us crap results like you've been giving us, then we're not with you.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree, with that. And like I said, I'm not trying to outright defend the guy, but I do think it's only fair that we at least acknowledge it. That we at least acknowledge that, that he's making an effort. And it seems to, at least from the surface, from this offseason so far, it seems to be working in coordination and in conjunction with what Tab wants. And again, if he can make that happen and it works with Tab and Tab's okay with it, then why don't you keep the guy around? I know it sucks. It's not what, fans want to hear. But, hey, he brought Tim Parker to us. Say what you will. He brought us Tim Parker. He brought us Maximiliano Urruti. He brought us Tyler Pasher for whatever that may be worth. He's brought us other players as well. Joe Corona. Hey, Matt Jordan helped make that happen. Say what you will, but Christian. Later, Christian. Thanks for following, man. Appreciate it. But I'm just saying that, again, I'm going to come back to this, but I am just saying that as much flack as I've given, and I think we've all given Matt Jordan, I do think this offseason does help his cause ever so slightly compared to the last few seasons. But again, it's been, we're 7 seasons in. I do think that it needed to happen before this point, and that's unfortunate. That is unfortunate for him, because if he'd had this season 2 years ago, it'd be a different story right now. Or off season.
Let's not kid ourselves. He's dug himself a huge hole.
He's dug himself a hole a grave that I don't know he can climb out of right now. I'm being honest.
Exactly. And like I said, he might have just benefited from the fact that that our owners actively looking to sell the team. So might as well just keep everything status quo. So he might have just benefited off of that. From that fact. But whatever the case is, he is our general manager right now. And if, for whatever reason, the Dynamo team improves and they make the playoffs this season, I mean, that's something good. It's another check that we can put on the box for Jordan, as far as being a GM, even though he has very few of them at the moment, and a whole long list of X's and things that went bad during his tenure. So, I mean, what have you done for me lately is basically what it comes down to.
Absolutely, 100% yes. What have you done for me lately? I mean, that should really be the mantra of the league. We've seen how many coaches this offseason, how many general managers this offseason, front office personnel. Again, I'll go back to Inter Miami. How many times have we seen a team immediately turn around and try to do something different because it failed the first time? We've been slow to act on it, and who knows? I mean, maybe it ends up okay. But, enough talk about that. I feel that we've definitely beat that dead horse. Look, it's 8:10. I want to talk MLS Super Draft, Mark. This has got me excited. This has got me excited because, I don't know how many of you follow Soccer by Ives or read up on Soccer by Ives site, but look, Ives G has some incredible coverage of the draft, of the players that are available for the draft. He's got a big board post up. He's got a mock draft post up. Their coverage is incredible over there. And it's really good if you don't know the players that are available, because they have some good info out there on the players. They have some bios out there that kind of explain why certain players are kind of projected in certain spots. I think it's really, really important that we take a look at those top 5 players that are available and kind of know what type of player may we be getting. Now, I say may because there are rumors out there that we might be looking to trade the 3rd overall pick in the draft. And that's something to say, because you can get a little bit of value out of that pick, and maybe more than you'd get out of a player. If the player you want, let's say we only have eyes on the top 2 players in the draft and only 2 specific players. If the player you want, or the player that Tab wants specifically, if he's not going to be available at 3, and maybe he's going to be available at 30, or maybe he's going to be available at 17, and you can trade with a team that wants to move up in the draft, and you can pick up a player, or you can pick up some allocation money, or you can pick up an international slot, or you can move up in the allocation order even, which could happen. Hey, I mean, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Now, with that said, George kind of says it right now. Ethan, please. Look, Ethan Bartlow is absolutely the guy that I want. He is the top-rated center back right now in terms of MLS readiness. Ethan Bartlow out of Washington. And I know I kind of gave you a chance, Mark, to kind of research a little bit, or at least read up, so you weren't totally caught flat-footed about this conversation. So what are your thoughts on Ethan Bartlow from what you've been able to read up on, what you found? Would you be okay if the Dynamo were to select Ethan Bartlow at number 3?
So obviously the top 2 center backs is Bartlow and Bauer, and Bartlow is the more MLS ready right now, and Bauer is the one with the higher ceiling and, I guess, better prospect overall. So I mean, obviously, if they do get the Bartlow kid, if he's available, because obviously Cincinnati has defensive holes as well, and they might take him in number 2. And yeah, I would for sure be down for that. To have a young up and coming defender with with a lot of pedigree. It'd be very, very nice to see a player of that caliber come into the system, and then obviously with the coaching staff that Tab has, his experience with youth, to help them, get up to par and up to speed as far as MLS play. It'll be a great thing to see. So yeah, obviously center back would be my first obvious position to go for. Now, depending on what happens, with the first 2 picks, a lot of things can happen. We were talking about it offline. I would go a little bit of a different way, and I know Sergio in the chat, mentions Barlow and Bauer, which is 2 top center backs, and Pereira, which is one of the midfielders that we talked about offline. I have another name that I would be interested in. Obviously, that would be Calvin Harris, who is the forward from Washington. Yeah, Wake Forest. I'm sorry, Wake Forest. And he's said to be a really outstanding prospect. Could be a future 9 for us. And the reason why I say him over Bauer or Pereira is, obviously that Generation Orange tag means a lot because it won't count towards your salary for the Dynamo. And,
Generation Adidas. You said Generation Orange. I'd love to have a tag named after the show, but I do want to clarify it's named Generation Adidas.
Yeah, so obviously, that wouldn't count against the salary cap, which is obviously a positive in the Dynamo's view because you don't have to pay for a player, and you can give that player time to grow and mold. Obviously another youthful player with a high ceiling, especially for that number 9 spot. He can be a future number 9 for us, and there's nothing wrong with that, and investing in a future number 9, especially somebody that's touted so highly and is a really highly touted prospect. Pereira is like Sergio mentioned. Pereira is also a Generation Adidas player as well. Which I wouldn't mind either or. But obviously we need more creativity in the midfield as far as 10. But then I look at Tab's formation. His 4-3-3 doesn't play with a 10. It plays with a 6 and 2/8 9 times out of 10. So is it really of a position of importance? As far as picking a 10 over a 9, I think in this situation you'd have to go with the 9 over the 10 because obviously because of the 4-3-3 that Tab plays. But if we could get Pereira too, like I said, I'm not against that either. I'm always looking for creativity in the midfield, somebody who can create a spark, and if this kid has the potential to do that, it could be a nice piece for us and. In our bench, his first season coming out, that would be great. That would be amazing as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Figueroa says defense is extremely slim. I think it's important to keep that in mind. We have basically 9 defenders signed to contracts right now. That includes Tim Parker. So you're, and Minor, I guess we'll make technically 10, but Minor's not a guy you're anticipating. Who knows? He did it last year. He did it the year before. So who knows? Minor's not a guy you're anticipating, or at least hoping you're not having to anticipate playing the whole season and being your starter for the whole season. But you kind of said it. Ethan Bartlow is considered to be the most MLS ready center back right now coming out of college. And there are rumors that Cincy may be at number 2, may be considering taking Bartlow, and I couldn't blame him because he's definitely worth taking. I wouldn't feel hard done by having to air quote settle for Bauer. Josh Bauer is considered to have the higher ceiling of the two. He's considered to have the most talent and potential out of those 2 players. Bartlow's just more MLS ready right at this moment. Pereira, and I'm just basing off Sergio's statement there, but Pereira is a player who plays at that kind of 6/8 position, primarily at the 8 position. Is he going to get playing time in front of Vera or in front of Corona at this point, or even in front of Seren? I don't know if he's going to get that opportunity, which means he's going to end up being shipped off to USL, or he's going to ride the bench the whole season. And then we're having to push Palomino even further down the depth chart, and I don't want to do that either. So I don't think Pereira is really an option at this point, unless Tab believes that Pereira is the right guy. Again, at this point, I am willing to put my chips in Tab's basket and say, I will put my faith in Tab and his process, trust in the process, because he is proving and showing that he understands what he needs to do to improve this team. And he's doing it in a way that makes a lot of sense. Now, again, some credit to Matt Jordan, some, not all, some credit to Matt Jordan. But again, it's super important that, we think about those players in the top 5 or so, because we may also move down. We don't have to, and I mentioned it, we don't have to draft at number 3. If a team is willing to trade us a player or trade us allocation money and let us move down 10 slots in the order, there are still positions, there are still center backs there that they're a little bit more raw. They're not going to be MLS ready this season. But hey, maybe that's the right way to go for this particular season. Look, if Tab feels that's the right move to make for him, then he'll make that move. He'll tell Matt Jordan, we need to make this move. And Matt Jordan's apparently he's going to make it happen. He's made a lot of these moves happen this offseason. I have to trust in this process. I have to trust in the way they're making this work. And I have to believe that Tab knows how he wants to build this team. If that means that they absolutely want Ethan Bartlow, then why not try to trade with Cincy and move up 1 slot? to make sure that you get Ethan Bartlow. Maybe you pay $100,000 to move up one slot, $100,000 allocation money. If you feel Bartlow is the better player for you right now, if he's going to get you where you want to go, then you make that trade. $100,000 is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket when it comes to allocation money. And if Bartlow is that second center back that you can pair with Tim Parker by the end of this season, then guess what? You've got your center back pairing for at least the next 3 to 5 seasons. Done. And now you can focus on the rest of the team.
And Sergio mentions, obviously, because I mentioned Harris, and I only mentioned Harris because, since he does decide to take Bartlow, right? But in this case, obviously he says Harris ain't going to get a playing time over the 23 other forwards we have. And that might be true, but again, that's where that Generation Adidas tag comes in handy, where we're not paying for the player, and you can let the player have time to grow and acclimate himself, and get used to the system. I mean, think about all the players that we have. I mean, our 2 forwards, Maxi and Christian, are about to be 30 years old. So you got to start thinking about, having a future number 9, who could sit, watch Christian and Maxi do their thing for maybe a year or two, and let them wait in the wing and let them play U.S. Open Cup games. Maybe that U23 league pops open and he goes in there and does really well with that. You never know. It's one of those things where we're also focused about now, and it's true. Yeah, we got to worry about now because we have a lot that Dynamo needs to accomplish to win back the fans. Because obviously we've been having such a crappy stretch of a period of time, but you can't forget about the future as well, and I don't mind having him, sit back at a year or two, especially if I'm not even paying for him, to learn the system, to learn on the tab and that coaching staff that he has, and get the player acclimated. That's all I'm trying to say as far as that.
It also is important, how does Tab feel about these particular players? Are these players that Tab feels are truly MLS ready? Look, Tab, just as much as anybody else, from a coaching perspective, he knows, looking at players, especially young players, if they're ready to make that step. He understands if a player is able to be coached up. He understands if a player is deserving of an opportunity. And there are a number of center backs that are 8 or 9 total center backs in this draft. There are some decent center backs that can still be picked up after the 5th or 6th or 7th pick in the draft. And again, you could still move back. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of opportunities right now. And it's a matter of what is the most important to Tab. What does Tab feel like is necessary to get that little bit better so that you can get that little bit closer to your end goal, which is MLS Cup, Supporters Shield, winning U.S. Open Cup, beating Frisco 3 times in the season, beating Austin our first time, our second time, and our third time, leaving Austin in our dust, whatever it is, whatever that goal is this year. It better at least be playoffs, for the love of God. But whatever those goals are that you have put on that board, and I guarantee you they have a board of things that they want to achieve this season, whatever those goals are, what is that piece? Who is that component or that player that you need to get you that much closer to achieving those goals? And again, I think Tab has earned at this point that we trust Tab enough to say if he's going to trade out, then he's trading out because he doesn't believe those players are ready. If he trades up or he trades down, then he believes that there's an opportunity for a player that maybe isn't what we have seen to be right, but he knows from his contacts or from his network that he's ready. Whatever it is, or maybe there's a player that they can pick up, using that draft slot, that they feel that the player they pick or they pick up is going to be better than the player they could pick. Whatever it is, I trust Tab to make that right call right now because he's shown he can. He's shown he understands how to do MLS right now. And look, it's one off season. I'll give you that. It's one off season, but it's been a hell of an off season, and it's come after a point where we all felt we were at our lowest as fans. It absolutely did. And, look, the say what you will about the rebrand, say what you will about the change, but they put a little bit of that money where the mouth is. I'm not saying all of it, but they did put the money where the mouth is, and they've proven that they are changing. They are adopting the mentality of this is a change. We are changing. They got rid of Elise, Mauro, and Kiki, the 3 most expensive players on the roster, minus Darwin Quintero. They got rid of them, and they got some money back in return, and they're using some of that, I'm sure, in the process of what they're doing. But the thing is they've rebuilt a lot of this already. there's only a very small amount of players that exist from 3 seasons ago, let alone last season.
Yeah,
And that's a
man.
lot to say. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and just to go back, backtrack a little bit about, it might just be worst case scenario where like, look, they're just gonna pick the best player available to them at that time. If the center back isn't there that they want, and that's fine too. I mean, at the end of the day, whatever player that you pick on number 3 should be a player that they believe can help improve the team overall. And like I said, I mean, they have a second pick in the I think the 30th round or whatever. There's a lot of other prospects down there. I mean, obviously we're so infatuated with having a top 3 pick, and we should be excited about that because we never picked this high, right? Or we never have draft picks to pick this high. So it is something to be infatuated with and to be excited about. But also, we have other picks, and a lot of times, a lot of teams are being built by the picks that they make in the second and third round. I can tell you 2 center backs that I looked at, from that are on the bottom, half of the first, maybe upper second round picks. A one from Michigan called Jackson Ragin, his 6'6", center back, a big center back. One of those guys that you need, for set pieces, and not only that, during heads and get 50-50 balls in the air and things of that nature. Another one is Matt Constantine, a Texan native, that came off North Carolina, the NCAA championship winning North Carolina Tar Heels. Another guy who's 6'6". There's a lot of talent out there, and you can't just be stuck with man, it's Barlow or anything. Sometimes it doesn't work like that. Draft night, a lot of us watch NFL and NBA, and our teams don't end up getting the player that we want, or for some reason they pass on the player that we for sure thought they were going to pick for whatever reason. This is the same thing with the MLS draft. I mean, obviously we don't follow the prospects as much as we do with the other leagues, but same thing happens in this draft as well. So
yeah, anything absolutely can and likely will happen. Don't get me wrong. Things are going to change on an absolute flip of the coin. That's just kind of how this always works. But what I'm interested to kind of see is our approach to this, because the Dynamo have not been known as a team to draft well. I mean, you look at just a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, that we drafted Joe Holland at number 8, number 10, I don't know, or somewhere in the draft right there. And I mean, the guy was a complete wash. I mean, right away, he was a complete wash. This guy never played I don't think he even played a minute for the Dynamo. And so to that point, though, I want to point something out. We heap a lot of praise on these players, and we say that they're MLS ready or they're not MLS ready. They're prospects, all these different things. There's a major difference between players coming out of college when it comes to American football versus players coming out of college when it comes to soccer. The difference is the college game is nothing like the pro game. The college game, there's unlimited substitutions, which I think is stupid to begin with. He played a few minutes, but were they minutes I'll even remember? Probably not. I know he did play. That was kind of tongue in cheek, but good call out. Thank you, Sergio. But it's a situation where with these draft players that you draft or in the super draft, where it is more unusual for a player that is drafted in the super draft, no matter where they're drafted on the board. When the player is drafted in the super draft, it is more unusual for them to become a starter in their first season than it is for them to not end up starting at all for their club. Forget in 2 to 3 seasons. I'm talking a starter at all for the MLS club that drafts them. The MLS Super Draft is not drafting players for your team most of the time. There's a chance Ethan Bartlow or Josh Bauer or Harris or Pereira could be that type of player that could feature for your team right out of the gate. More often than not, they're not going to be. And so, go ahead.
Look, prime example. I mean, the number 1 overall pick last year, Frankie Amaya from FC Cincinnati. His first season was a complete wash. He didn't really start playing until last season. And that was the number 1 overall pick. So I mean, it's one of those things where the fact of the matter is the soccer culture in NCAA as opposed to professional soccer is totally different. So it's going to take these players most of them some time to get acclimated to the new system, the new style of play, and being on the grind more often than none, and that's just the truth about it, So like I said, regardless of whoever we pick, it's a high possibility that we won't even see these players featured in our league matches. Maybe a couple of cup matches, and maybe RGV, or depending on whatever other mechanism they're trying to use to get players, more playing time.
Yeah, so the point I was making is, I look at it in regards to the idea that these players coming out of college are going to be MLS ready. I say MLS ready, and I think even in the case of Ethan Bartlow, we're talking about a player that's going to need time, at least in the top, in that USL championship. So, Harry asked this question earlier, and I'm kind of tying it to this. But Harry asked, what happens to these players that Houston does end up picking with the 3 picks that we have? We have the 3rd, the 30th, and the 57th pick. That's the 3rd pick in the first round, the 3rd pick in the second round, and the 3rd pick in the 3rd round. Do we send them to RGV like we've historically done the last few seasons, or do we loan them out to other USL teams? I think that's kind of an interesting question from the aspect of RGV. We know RGV just got their quote unquote independence. They don't have a coach yet. They've been clamoring for a coach now for how long? They've been clamoring that technically we've been holding them back, but they still don't have a coach. And when I called it out earlier this week, I was basically told that the reason they don't have a coach is because until the dotted line was signed by the Dynamo to end the agreement they had with RGV, that RGV couldn't move forward in finding a new coach. That is absolutely horseshit. And I don't know who is putting that out there from the RGV end. It is absolutely horse crap. Like it is, without a doubt. Look, there are clubs all over the world that start talking to players well before that player is signed to their team. They start talking to that agent well before the team that player plays for is even approached about whether they want to sign that player. And those are hard and fast rules. So you're going to tell me that Ron Patel, in his infinite wisdom as the RGV Toros president of the team, or whatever, coming from a team where he was president before, or was at least part of their front office before, doesn't know that he can start talking to coaches before the dotted line is signed? That is absolute hogwash. That is stupid. I'm sorry. I like RGV as an organization, but I don't like that look from RGV. And look, there are fans in RGV that are really starting to wonder what's going on with our club. They don't have a coach yet. And they've got time. The USL isn't starting right away, but they've watched the top coaches be signed by other clubs. That is a club right now that is in dire straits, that needed a big change, and missing out on those top coaches because you weren't ready or you weren't in a position to make that move. It tells me it's lazy, and it tells me it's not a club that is looking to work as a top club. It is a club that is struggling to actually operate as a top club. So look, we'll see when RGV do finally sign their coach, but I'm going to go on record and say that it's going to be someone that nobody in that organization from a fan standpoint is going to want. It's going to be a cast off from some team, and it's going to be someone they're going to be like, okay, maybe this isn't the greatest thing. I'm just saying, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, the grass is not always greener on the other side. I hope independence works. It is needed to work, but right now it doesn't look like they're headed in the right direction.
George mentions that they need to bring back Will Cabrera, which is kind of funny, but
he's tied up. He's got a gig with Barca. He ain't coming over here, or Real Madrid, one of the two.
He's at Real Madrid. Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, it's a crazy situation with RGV. And again, I wouldn't be surprised, if don't be surprised if we draft nobody tomorrow. If somehow we end up selling all these draft picks, just like Nashville did and bought all of Philadelphia's. It's a possibility. It depends on what happens, in all that situation. Because, like I said, you're gonna bring in new young players in, and if you don't have a system to put them in that you can give them time to grow and get acclimated and get real game time in, then what's the purpose of bringing in players if you're just going to have them wandering around the halls?
And that's a really good point. And again, it's a matter of, does Tab feel, and I keep coming back to this, but does Tab feel the draft is the best place to acquire this talent? Look, we've acquired quite a bit of talent so far. we got 3 draft picks. If we get 3 more players, that's not the worst thing in the world. But are they going to be ready to start in MLS? I keep coming back to that because it's important, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to upgrade your starting 11 where you can. And if they're going to be a player that's only going to come off the bench, are they going to get the chance to truly develop? Now, look, Sergio says this. Philadelphia, you just brought them up, the Philly Union. They can afford to do that because their academy is incredible. We don't have that yet. I completely agree with that. Philly can afford to just play their young players and not worry about the draft because they have such a robust academy system right now that is churning out talent after talent after talent. That's all headed overseas, but they're earning enough money from those transfers and able to go get big name players, able to go get big players. Look, we're not in that position yet. Go ahead.
Let me throw you a scenario. I mean, just because, obviously we need money to bring in other players as well, right? So, I mean, if somebody said, like, if somebody's really just in love with Bartlow and he happens to fall to us at 3, and another team, for whatever reason, just feels that they just need him, and they give you, they say, you know what, look, we're going to give you $250K because we think highly of this kid, whatever. Now that's up to you to whether or not, hey, is that $250K going to help me out to go get another player of quality where I can, put in place of right next to Tim Parker, or do I really think highly enough of this kid where I can use him now? Because the thing is now, it's the now. We need to focus on the now. Tab has said himself, look, yeah, I want to think about the future, but the now, because I might not be here in the future if everything keeps going downhill the way it's been. So if put yourself in Tab Ramos' shoes, man, if somebody comes and says, hey, you know what, I'm going to give you 200 in GAM, 50,000 in TAM for the number 3 spot. Bartlow is available.
I'm going to be hard pressed not to take it. I'm going to be honest. We turned 450,000, allocation into Tim Parker. So 250,000 gets you almost to another Tim Parker. It gets you to another player that can make that impact right away. A player that you don't have to sit there and develop over time. And look, there are teams that are willing to make those kinds of moves. There absolutely are. There is enough talent at the top end of this draft that there are teams that are willing to move up. Now, it's also possible that someone could say, hey, we're willing to trade this player. We've, like I mentioned earlier, we've got plenty of center backs, or we've got plenty of wingers, or we've got plenty of midfielders. We've got this extra player, and they're not going to feature for us most likely, but we want them to get playing time. We'll loan this player to you for a year if you let us have the 3rd pick, and we'll even send you some allocation in the process. Oh, hell yeah, I'm doing that. If it's a player you feel that you can play regularly, why not?
And I might even feel the need to tell them, you know what, hey, throw another 100K. You can get the other 2 picks as well.
Yeah.
It's just that.
Here's the reason that I don't even want to have to think about it no more.
Because the fact of the matter is, we do have a system right now with RGV that's not stable. Obviously with this relationship ending the next season. So why do I want to send my players to an environment that's not settled? Especially young players that need all the nurturing and need all the good vibes possible to progress in their careers, right? And then obviously they're going to be these kids are 22, 21, 22 years old. They're too old to play for my U19s. They're too old to play for my academy. My youth. I mean, the U23 league isn't set up yet, so I mean, I can't really form a U23 squad at the moment for them to have any type of game time to play. So I mean, obviously it's either I have them on the bench, or I don't have these players at all. So it's a bad situation to be placed in, and obviously, the Philadelphia situation is a lot different. And I mentioned it offline with you, Sean, that obviously because Philadelphia has that luxury of having such a great academy, that they don't care. They don't look. We never scouted these players. These players come out of college. We have our own scouting system over here. We're doing a great job with that. We have better players in our academy at a younger age than these players coming out of the draft right now currently. So that's the way they feel, and that's great. You know.
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback on that. Sergio says Zimmerman was because the question came. Actually, I should probably ask the question. Where to go? Hold on. Do you think you can? Uh, do you think you can later flip the college kids for more money later on? And Sergio responded, Zimmerman was drafted by Frisco. They got a bunch of money in the trade to LAFC, and then LAFC got even more money from Nashville for him. Look,
Yeah,
it's true. I was going to say it's true that you can do that. If you hit on the player, you can absolutely turn them around for money, for more than you would have spent on them traditionally. But here's the caveat, the kicker to that. It's not your success rate likelihood of that happening is pretty low. There's a reason why Philly has sold all their picks, and it's not just because they have a great academy. It's also because the draft, and Harry brought this up earlier, it's becoming less of an important thing for MLS and more of an important thing for USL teams. Because USL teams are the ones that reap the benefits of these MLS teams drafting these players. 9 times out of 10, the player ends up with the affiliate or the linked USL team to the MLS club. And so if that's all that's happening, and I've said this before and I've advocated for this before, if all that's going to happen is you draft these players only to send them to the USL and hope that they become something, why don't they just make the draft a USL thing, and then MLS teams have a chance to just come in and sign or transfer for these USL players? Just like we did with Tyler Pasher. Look, we had nothing to do with his development, but now we've brought him in. He was a cheap player coming out of USL. He didn't cost us a lot of money, but at the same time, we were able to grab him. I think that needs to be the way that MLS goes. And yes, I'm harping on the MLS Super Draft, in general, but it's just so confusing that we put so much time and energy from an MLS base into this super draft when so few of these players end up being what they're projected to be. You pointed out Amaya last year, and there are countless of times that's been the case. You look at, traditionally speaking, it is less than 20% of MLS Super Draft players that end up starting for their team. I said in the first year, it gets just as bad the second and third year. By the third year, some of those players are starting to play for MLS clubs, but 9 times out of 10, it's not the club they started with. And so, yes.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you on that, from that perspective. I mean, if you do make the super draft something, a USL draft or whatever, to where these USL teams pick up these players and they're able to develop them, and have them playing professional soccer, and then sell them off to an MLS club for a $100,000 fee or whatever, or $50,000 fee, and not only benefits the USL club because they're making money off a player, that they didn't have to buy or anything from their standpoint, and it helps that league grow as well, as a developmental league, and that's what we're really looking at. Because, like I said, the thing with the draft that's way different in MLS as opposed to the other sports in America is that the other sports in America, they don't have an academy. They don't have a whole farm system. Well, I mean, aside from baseball, but baseball drafts their players too. But but they don't have a whole farm system of players just growing under their guidance. I don't see the Astros over there, going and signing a 12-year-old kid from Alvin, Texas, because he's an awesome first baseman right now. That's not happening. But in soccer, obviously that's what soccer environment, the soccer community does. They go and find these players 8, 9, 10 years old. They groom them, they put them in their system, they teach them their skills, their techniques, and all this stuff, to grow them, and hopefully they get a great player out of it at the end, and this draft thing, I've never been a fan of the super draft, because of the fact of the success rate being so low. I think I forgot somebody who mentioned in here our last big draftee was probably Will Bruin, maybe Corey Ash. I'm not sure what I think he was drafted a year later than Bruin. But I mean, that you're talking about 10 years ago. You look at the draft classes under the Matt Jordan era. Like, none of these players have had any impact on the Dynamo first team.
So I'm gonna bring statistics into this, actual statistics, and I'm happy to share this. It comes from AmericanSoccerAnalysis.com. I'll share the link on Twitter here in just a minute. But this is looking back, and this was done in October 25th of 2020, so just last year. And it's a look at basically how successful MLS Super Draft picks are. This is basically looking at the figures from 2013 through 2019, including the 2013 MLS Supplemental Draft, which no longer takes place. There's just 4 rounds. It used to be that there were 2 rounds of the draft, and then you had a supplemental draft after that. So they're looking at basically a 7-year period where there were 30 total rounds of the draft, and 632 total draft picks, from which a total of 576 players were selected, approximately 91% players selected. They can deduce that the majority of Major League Soccer teams use their allocated draft picks when available. That's 91%. Okay, they're using their draft picks. However, the number of players actually signed to contracts by their drafting club is significantly lower. According to what they were able to find, there is a sharp contrast between the number of players drafted versus the number of that are signed to MLS contracts. Out of the 576 total players selected, only 269 were signed to an actual MLS contract by the club that drafted them. They went further in depth. They go really, really in depth, actually. It seems like the best conference to draft players from is the Atlantic Coast Conference, which is interesting. But
North Carolina,
say that again.
North Carolina, and Wake Forest are the two biggest programs in college soccer.
And those coaches of those particular organizations, those particular colleges know how to find talent. They know how to sign that talent in terms of recruitment, and they know how to develop that talent into MLS quality players. So they look at effectiveness and talking about the the number of players basically that don't play. Look, there are a handful of players. This is actually really interesting to look at. If they're drafted, even in the first 10 picks, the likelihood of them playing more 50% of the minutes for their club is astronomically low. I'm looking, and this is roughly 12 to 13 players that are 14. Sorry, there was one player I missed. 14 players picked within the top. 13 players within the top 25 picks that actually featured for 50% of the minutes of their team. I mean, that is incredible to me. And you're talking, the top 25 players in each draft. Again, this is 7 years worth of data. And only 13 of them have actually featured more than 50% of the minutes of their team. Look, they're not starting. I keep coming back to that. They're not starting for their teams. And it's not just 1 year. We're talking 7 years worth of data, which means that these players have had time to develop. So it's just, I'll share this link because I think it's super important, but it's just to show that the Super Draft is not a place you're going to get your long-term starters from. It's just not. And if that's the case, then how much value do you really place on these Super Draft picks? Go ahead, Mark.
When we were making draft picks, like Earl Bruin and Jeff Cameron and players of that nature, the college player level to the MLS player level at that time was a lot closer. So that's why those players were able to succeed a lot more during that time period of MLS 1.0 or 1.5 or whatever it was during that time period. The level of play from MLS is so far ahead now from the college level that this draft really is obsolete. Look, I agree with what Sergio's saying. There's teams that find success, that have successful drafts and find players here and there. Yeah, there's always going to be players that nobody really accounts for, that comes out of nowhere, and things of that nature. That's the great thing about soccer. Soccer is a game where you can be the smallest player on the pitch, but you can be the best player regardless of your size, weight, and height. So that's the thing about that. But the thing about MLS that I think they're failing on here is that they're trying to make it too much like the NBA and the NFL with this draft system. I mean, they're like, I like the idea of making it a USL draft, if that's the case, if we want to keep a draft system. But like I said, the academies are the way to go with these soccer clubs, and if they really want to compete, not just for viewership here in the States, but for viewership around the world. Soccer is a global sport. You're not only trying to win your audience here in America, but you're trying to win the audience in England. You're trying to win the audience in Spain, and Europe and Asia, things of that nature. So We got to get out. We got to get out of that mindset of just thinking that MLS is just the American soccer league. It's not. It's supposed to be a global soccer league.
You brought up the that MLS is trying to make the draft similar to NBA and NFL, and here's the difference and the reason why those two organizations or two leagues can have such big drafts and have so many of those players that actually do end up successful. Now, Sergio notes, well, not everybody's gonna make it, and that's true. I wouldn't say most kids don't make it. I would say actually in the NFL, your percentage drops, especially in later rounds. But they also have 7 rounds of draft. But what I wanted to point out is this: the difference is that you have 11 players, no more than 20 players that are going to play significant minutes for your team in MLS each season. In NFL, you have 53 roster slots, and usually 40 of those players are going to get significant minutes throughout the season. Maybe it's just the special teams, but they're still going to get minutes. In MLS or in soccer in general, the player that starts the match needs to be able to finish the match. You have 90 minutes and you have 3 subs for 11 players. Guess what? Someone is going to have to play. 8 of your players are going to have to play the entire match, the entire 90 minutes, at least most matches. What that means is those players, those young players that aren't MLS ready in terms of fitness, they're not going to feature for a while. They've got to get that MLS fitness. In NFL, if you're not fit ready for a full NFL game, guess what? You play special teams for a few games. It's not a big deal. They still get minutes. They still get game time. They still get a chance to play for their team at NFL game speed. That's the difference. And it's the same thing with the NBA. The NBA players that are drafted, now they do have the D League and that, and some of the draft players usually end up going there. But the reason your first 2 rounds of players usually end up sticking with their teams right out of the gate is because those players are going to get minutes. You have opportunities to make more substitutes. And so I come back to this is the big reason why it needs to be a USL draft, because at least those players would have a chance from a development standpoint to play and feature for the team that drafts them. Right now, most of these players, again, we're talking like 80 something percent of these players don't end up even playing minutes or signing contracts for their actual MLS clubs. It was 50% roughly, give or take, initially. But really, by the time you factor in the number of minutes actually being played, it's less than 20% of players that actually play meaningful minutes. 50% of their teams, their drafting clubs minutes. So what I'm saying is yes, there's talent, yes, there's possibilities, but is the value of that possibility as equal to or less or more than the value of a known quantity player that you know what you can get out of them? Is that potential ceiling, is that potential talent, is that potential worth more to you than a known quantity? And in MLS and in soccer in general, you look at the global market, the known quantity is more valuable than the young players that are still developing. And it's true because if you look at the top players that are making the most money, it's not your youngest players for a reason. Players that are 30 to 35 years old, if they've played well in their careers before that point, they're getting their biggest contracts.
Think about this, Sean, and everybody in the chat. I'm gonna post this question to you as well. Of the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years of Dynamo history, what player has come out of nowhere and surprised you? You know, like think about it really. Like, what player has come out of nowhere surprised you? Maybe Mauro, but I mean, but we invested in Mauro as a young player. You know, we brought him in. You know,
we didn't draft Mauro.
No, yeah, but I mean, we went and scouted him. You know, and we brought him in because we thought he had that potential to be that kind of player. But, you know, aside from that, I mean, but like, you know, what young player came through and just surprised us out of nowhere, you know, like, and I say it as for an example, as far as like, you know, like the kid from Shaka right now, what's his, the Hope kid that just kind of came out of nowhere and is scoring goals for Shaka right now in the Bundesliga. What kid have we had that's come out like that? Nobody. You know, I can't think of anybody at the top of my head. Can you, Sean?
I can't even. I'm gonna be honest. I can maybe name one player that came out of the draft that is getting. Well, I'm thinking outside of even the Dynamo. Forget just the Dynamo. I'm thinking all MLS teams that have come out and been able to be a player that has featured for their club, and secondly, is a player that's being looked at to go overseas. And right now, that's Jordan Morris,
Yeah,
and that's
I mean
it. That's it.
the only two players that I can think of from the draft that came like that with a lot of hype that actually kind of got close to their hype is Jack Harrison and Kyle Larin. You know, so those are the only two. And then Jordan Morris, he had the hype before because he was already making the U.S. national team while he was in college, so he was already kind of quote unquote one of those prodigy or whatever. But think about it, man. I mean, as far as the Dynamo, we haven't had anybody like that, you know. And I'm not saying that can't happen, but I mean, but do you really think one of these players here these top 5 players that are available to us can break into the system their first season and just give us a spark? I mean, if he is like the Pereira kid, if that Pereira kid it can come in here and show something and Tab sees like, you know what, this kid's gonna displace Palomino or Memo or whatever. Because the thing is, like, we're so enamored with having, because Memo came from this, blah blah blah. And this is no disrespect to Memo or Palomino. Palomino, he has so much hype, he's so young, this and that. But I mean, but what I'm looking for is for that player to displace the players that we love. I'm looking for that player who's gonna make it hard. It's gonna make it hard for me as a fan to not put Memo on the starting lineup, not put Palomino, to not give Palomino minutes, to fight for a start against Valentine. I'm looking for that player.
Yeah. You're using the super draft currently is going to require it's going to require, yes, those are players, but again, Kyle Larin is the exception to this rule. I forgot about Kyle Larin. For these players are not players that are going to go feature overseas. Miles Robinson is not a player that's going to get signed by a Premier League team. Kyle Larin is the lone exception to this role. Maybe Alphonso Davis, I think he was, but he came up through the Toronto Academy.
And no, Jack Harrison was the other one. Just sent those two.
Thank you. Yeah, those two. I think though he was already in the Philly system before that.
I think I know he was in some system, but I mean he was.
It might not have been Philly. But yeah, so there have been a few studies that have been done, and the reason I just want to point this out is because there's this distinct thought from the kind of the American fan perspective that there's significant value to be found in the draft because it's a draft. But the reality is, because of the differences in the college game and the MLS game, because of the differences in the way that the global game is played versus how college plays, which is not true in the NFL or not true with American football. It's not true with college basketball. It's not true with college baseball even. Because of the differences, though, it's a lot harder to break out as a soccer player coming out of college. And so to be fair to Figueroa's point, if they're going to go overseas, they're likely going to end up skipping college altogether. That's absolutely true, and they're not going to end up with an MLS team unless it's a Bobby Wood to RSL situation. But the player is, 30 years old now? 28 years old, 29 years old? I mean, he's probably going to do some decent damage in MLS, but to what end? I don't know. We'll see. But I just want to point out that the draft is not the best place to be finding the best players. It's a place to find potential talent, to try to uncover potential talent. I was reading an article earlier today that said a savvy manager might be able to find talent between the 25th and the 50th pick. And if they're really savvy, they're going to trade that pick and they're going to go ahead and get some allocation money, or they're going to get some other type of asset that they can use to make moves to get a higher end player. The reality, based on the facts and figures, is that after about the 5th pick, your quality of player that you get, it is tremendously diminished. If you don't get one of the first 5 picks, you're almost guaranteed not going to get a starter for your team. Now, it happens every year. There's 1 or 2 players in the late first round through the 3rd round, basically, that somehow end up becoming featured for their team. They end up figuring something out that makes them work. It happens. And yes, there are players, but there is value there. But is there more value there than what you can trade that pick for in terms of the actual pick? If a team really wants the player at that position, is it better for you to keep that pick and hope that they pan out? Or is it better for you to trade it for money, allocation money specifically, or for other things, other assets that you can use? How did that happen? Because I turned off auto mod. Anyways, whatever. It's kind of funny though. But there's more value in trading that pick, and it's usually proven. Now, again, you could swing for the fences and hit one out of every 4 or 5 out of every 3 or 4 years, and that's great. But not every team does. And if you know that your scouting is not good enough to land you that player, let's say Tab's not comfortable with that. Tab goes, you know what? I've looked at Ethan Bartlow. I've looked at Josh Bauer. I've looked at Harris. I've looked at Pereira. I don't feel that any of these 4 players are MLS ready enough for us to consider to be a starter for our team. They're going to be a player on the periphery. They're going to be a player that we're going to give 5 minutes here. We might give them 10 minutes in a match. Maybe they'll get that one spot start when our starter goes down. Is that enough for that player to develop into a featured player for your team? If the answer to that question is no, and you can get $250,000 in allocation for that same draft pick, is that more valuable at $250,000 in allocation than the draft pick that you might use or that you would use in that case? And I think the answer is almost unilaterally that allocation money is more valuable.
Oh yeah, and that's why I posed that question, because, like I said, it's a possibility. I don't know if it'd be that amount. One can hope, but I mean, it's one of those things where a lot of things can happen, and I think the Dynamo are willing to make the pick if they need to, but I think they're more willing to trade out of it and gain some money out of it from the way I hear them talk about it. Because I mean, they keep mentioning, that there might be possibilities of them trading out of it, and they've been mentioning it a lot in the interviews that they talk with on Glenn and other avenues and things of that nature. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do trade out of it. Obviously, the excitement of bringing in a fresh young face, somebody who we obviously think would have high quality because he is a high draft pick, would be nice. But at the end of the day, it's about trying to turn around this team right now and what's the best thing for right now for this squad, because obviously they need to make the playoffs. They need to start having a winning season. They need to bring back they need to get the fans back on board and have a good start to this 2021 season.
Absolutely. And again, it just comes down to, in my opinion, you asked Tab, is this player at this position, is the person that you're targeting, do you feel that they're ready or that they're in a position to contribute to the team right away? And if you don't think they're ready to contribute right away, is it a player you genuinely believe that can develop in the next 2 to 3 seasons? If the answer is no, then you have your answer. If the answer is I'm not 100% sure, you have your answer. Don't worry about it. Just move on. Look, we can find talent elsewhere. They've proven it this offseason with the trades and the signings this offseason. There's no doubt they found the talent in various places that they might not have found otherwise. Now, I do know that they seem to be high on Ethan Bartlow, and I have no problem with that. If that's what they end up going, I trust Tab. I trust his vision for players. I trust his ability to assess talent. I trust it, and I'm willing to wait, because it's likely he's not going to be a starter, is my guess. Now, he could surprise me. Hey, if he comes out and he's a starter, then all the more power to him. But we'll find out tomorrow at what time is it? I think it starts at 1 o'clock tomorrow, Central Time, the Super Draft. And again, 3rd pick overall. We'll know if we're trading the pick or not pretty quick in the draft. It's not going to take very long. So if you're available to hop on your computer or your phone and tune into the MLS Super Draft, I recommend it. It's also fun just to listen to the analyst banter, even if most of it is total crap, but it's fun to listen, fun to tune in and watch that. I won't be able to because of work commitments, but I digress. With all that said, it is 9 o'clock. It's actually after 9 o'clock now. We got a little bit longer to go. We're only going to go 2 hours because I got to be up early in the morning. But Mark, is there anything else that you want to talk about at this point or bring up at this point?
No, not really. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of things to see. There's still a lot of offseason to go. Obviously, the next big hurdle is this draft, and things of that nature. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with that. I don't have anything else to talk about.
So there was one other thing I wanted to talk about. I kind of hinted at it a little bit earlier when I mentioned the Bobby Wood to RSL thing and the rumors / confirmation of that happening. This is one of those things that I caught my attention for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is a player who is a former U.S. men's national team / still U.S. men's national team player at a position the U.S. men's national team have continued to struggle to actually find a long-term starter, but maybe they finally have it. I don't know. We'll find out soon. No, we're not going to talk Martin Vasquez, although, yes, Martin Vasquez did sign to become an assistant coach for the Houston Dynamo FC. He's an incredibly great incredibly great coach with an incredible pedigree who absolutely. I must have missed something. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll get there in a minute. But I mean, it's just. Look, Martin Vasquez is going to help the club, no doubt about it. He's going to be able to bring in, the ability to see talent in a different light. He's a Tab guy. Tab definitely had him kind of handpicked, and Tab trusts him, which means you have a guy that can go and do some scouting for you locally. He's a guy that can work with Paul Holliker as well. He's a guy that has connections. He has, network connections all over the U.S. and abroad. And he's a guy that's probably going to be able to help you find and uncover some of those, diamonds in the rough that you're hoping to find. I don't expect his impact to be this season necessarily, but who knows? And of course, we had the open assistant coach slot because Pablo Mastroeni went and signed with another team. I don't remember what team it was, but he went and signed with another team. So you had that open slot for a new assistant coach, and it just makes total sense that it would be Martin Vasquez. And when I saw it, I was happy. Again, it's a coach that has the, has the pedigree to help the club. Any thoughts to add to that, Mark?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's one of those things where he has a lot of background, obviously with the Jurgen Klinsmann era of the U.S. men's national team. During that time period of U.S. soccer, he was an assistant under Klinsmann in Bayern Munich as well for a little bit, and other aspects as well. So he has a lot of pedigree, like you said. He was a former player as well. So, but it's an exciting thing. Obviously, it's a player, it's a coach that Tab is really familiar with, and when you can bring somebody with a lot of familiarities and can think the same way like you do and kind of knows what you're looking for, it's good. You need a good right hand man.
Yeah, absolutely, and it needs to be someone you can trust, right? Someone that you have faith in, and someone that can help in terms of tactically, can help in terms of coaching, whether it's in practices or not. And clearly, Tab feels that's the guy. So hey. Again, I trust in Tab, and we'll wait to see. But let's come back to this Bobby Wood thing for just a second. The reason I brought this up is because, and I mentioned this elsewhere, but RSL is currently being owned / being sold by MLS. MLS is working to sell the franchise because of the whole thing with Del Loy Hansen, the previous owner of RSL. So with that in mind, is this not a conflict of interest for MLS, who are basically running the technical side of things, to bring in a player like Bobby Wood, to start for RSL? Oh, Pablo went to RSL. That is interesting, actually. Sergio brings up a good point. Pablo went to RSL, and we said, okay, we'll take Martin Vasquez from you. So RSL apparently valued him more, which really means MLS valued Pablo Mastroeni more, because MLS is running things over at RSL. And I don't know if we valued Vasquez more or if it was just the perfect opportunity. And Tab's like, yeah, I've got connections with the guy and he's available. Why not? Let's do it. And I don't think there's any problem with that. But the whole Bobby Wood to RSL thing, to me, it's just really interesting from the aspect of MLS making the calls as to player movement and things like that, because there's no owner. and they're working to sell the franchise. So it's just interesting. Go ahead.
But but this is one way we talked about the whole thing with the Dynamo situation as far as selling. Sometimes you got to make the club appealing to potential buyers.
Yep.
And Bobby Wood, obviously being a United States national team player, or on the cusp player, he's been selected numerous times. It's a name that the soccer world in America know. So it makes it more appealing for potential buyers to come by. That hey, we got so and so player, this and that. This is what's going on. This is things of that nature. That's what I'm saying. Like, you can go the route of maybe what Brenner's doing, and just saying, just get the minimal amount of players that you can, and just get the players that you can under this certain budget. Or you can go the route of another club and make sure you sign players that make the club attractive to potential buyers. So that's what I think of this Bobby Wood's signature, to be honest.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Real quick before we kind of close out the show, because we are nearly to that point. Harry says no, MLS is single entity. I think it is to make them more attractive for Vegas, and he says he's calling it that Vegas is going to be the one that ends up with the club when the time comes. Whomever is the one that buys it. I think that's interesting. I mean, there's clearly a soccer base for fandom in Real Salt Lake, or in Real Salt Lake, in Salt Lake City right now. Is it the most entertaining locale to go to? No. But it is a locale that works, and it's been a locale that has worked for MLS and for NWSL. Now, with that being said, the NWSL franchise did get sold/moved to KC. And they will now be playing in Kansas City, which just lost to the franchise to Salt Lake but 3 seasons ago. Interesting stuff happening. I use the word interesting, it feels like, all the time. But there's a lot going on in the world of soccer, a lot going on right now in the realm of kind of U.S. soccer, in particular, U.S. soccer from the federation standpoint, U.S. soccer from our national teams, but also U.S. soccer from MLS, USL, and otherwise, especially with the draft tomorrow. Make sure, if you can, tune into the Super Draft tomorrow at 1 p.m. I will not be tuning in, but feel free to tweet at us. I'm sure if Mark gets a chance, he'll hop on Twitter and share his thoughts on who we draft or who we trade for, whichever happens. No MLSBA talk, unfortunately. No time for it. Like I said, I have to be up early, although Nest ragged on me about having to be up early. Hey, 6 o'clock for me is early, okay? But with all that being said, in all seriousness, guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. We definitely appreciate it. I am going to go ahead and call it here, Mark, unless you have something else you want to add. But this has been a great show, and I have definitely appreciated it, each and every one of you tuning in. And do us a favor, if you haven't already, make sure you follow us on Twitter. You can see our Twitter handles there, and also at Gen Orange Radio on Twitter. And if you haven't, go follow us on anchor.fm, anchor.fm/Gen Orange. We do appreciate it for sure.
Oh, for sure, guys. Thank you for the follow. Thank you for the support. Always, appreciate it.
You're getting called out in chat. You are getting called out in chat for not being a Surge member.
I still have to the 29th, right?
I mean, yeah, you ticking down them days, buddy. We'll see. Speaking of which, I do want to give a shout out to the Surge. If you have not checked them out on Twitter at what is it? At the Surge F. What is it? At the Surge SG? Okay, I can totally think right now. Or if you haven't checked them out on wearethesurge.com, definitely make sure you check them out. There's a lot of great, especially if you're a member. There's Nest is literally throwing your ass under the bus right now. Woo! I like it, Nest. But yeah, wearethesurge.com. If you haven't got your Surge membership yet, definitely grab one if you can. Look, it's a group of incredible individuals. They're very active on their Discord. And there's a lot of good thoughts and a lot of good opinions. And hey, if you're into Rocket League or you're into Warzone, there is no better server right now for Dynamo fans than the Surge's Discord. I am so out of it. The Surge's Discord server for all that good stuff. But hey, guys, thanks again for tuning in. I'm out of it. I'm sorry. But as always, it's been amazing, and hold it down.